That one dude has totally disrupted the entire auto manufacturing industry. He has totally disrupted how the electric vehicle will now survive and thrive. So you can't tell me that one person cannot change the world, because we got plenty of examples. I don't care if you are a Legion person that started on Tuesday and it's Thursday, and you get the CEO of or the CFO or the CTO or the CIO of Microsoft on the phone, you are peer to peer. Don't ever put yourself down as below this person. This person puts their freaking pants on the same way you do. They brush their teeth the same way you do. They put their underwear on the same way you do. Talk to them peer to peer. That's the whole mission to the kids, teaching them to have peer to peer conversations from day one. My goal in building a foundation is that it's something that is there long after I'm gone. And my kids' kids can benefit from this, and their kids can benefit from this, and teaching them how to do what I'm doing, but not just to do it themselves, but to replace themselves. And the faster you can get to replacing yourself in that business model that you're doing, the longer your thing is going to last.
Welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues. I'm your host, Ali Horia. My goal in this program is to educate our audience about various global issues and how we can help. My guest today is Dominic Turner, the Executive Director and founder of the Turner Foundation for Community Advocacy, where he leads efforts to empower underserved communities through advocacy, mentorship, and scholarship programs. With a focus on youth development and community uplifting, Dominic's work has helped secure millions of dollars in resources for the Southwest Atlanta region in Georgia, positively and directly impacting well over 20,000 residents there. And a lot more people indirectly. Professionally, he's got over 20 years of experience in corporate sales and leadership, working in senior roles in companies like Inc. and Dell SecureWorks, and he's led successfully over multi-million-dollar sales campaigns. So he knows what he's doing. Hello, Dominic, and welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues.
Hey, Ali, how are you?
I'm doing well. Great to have you here. We're going to have a nice conversation today about a lot of things, and I'm excited about this. So I'm going to start with a young Dominic Turner. By young, I don't mean in your 20s and 30s like you are now, but young Dominic Turner and his dreams and aspirations. What was childhood like? What values were instilled in you early on in your childhood? How did you grow up? All of that stuff, the social scene around you. And then, coming into early adulthood, coming into that 16 plus age, what were you thinking? Were you thinking you'd be sitting there, or were you going to be, a batter for the Atlanta Braves?
Wow. I'll tell you, I love the question, Ali. I was just talking with someone about this the other day, and growing up for me, we grew up in the video game arcade era where, preteens were going to arcade rooms versus sitting in front of their TV at home, playing, Xbox and whatnot in front of the TV. And we were outdoor kids. I would like to say we were the last generation of true outdoor kids. And, we had to be home before the street lights hit you, the kind of situation. Creativity was whatever we could find outdoors to, and the imaginations of myself and our friends that we grew up with together, where we'd create all sorts of, forts and adventures outdoors in the woods and climbing trees. And it was an outdoor experience for sure. And, growing up also was learning how to make my own money. So going around and knocking on doors and cutting grass and asking if I could shovel the snow in the wintertime and earning $20-30 for doing that. And, with inflation, that'd probably be $150 a day, but to do the same work. But yeah, it was an outdoor experience. And so I'll pause there.
I get sidetracked really quickly. So I have to come in there and say, you're right. With inflation, it'll be well over $100 today, but nobody's paying $100 today for the same job. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we have a lot of poverty, because, shovel the snow, I would assume, you go into, you knock on a door, somebody opens the door, your 15-year-old, 14-year-old kid, like, can I shovel your private? Like, yeah, here's $20. It's not going to be here's $100, right? So that's an issue. Now, growing up from that childhood, and I really appreciate that colorful depiction, because it took me back to, yes, I remember being kids and, finding an extra sweater or anything to make goalposts with, and then, playing football and kind of like, okay, this is the goal line. And so things like that happened. Whereas today, yeah, it's really difficult to get kids out in the first place. Now, growing up, you've changed. You are who you are today. But I always ask people in leadership positions if they think that their growth to where they are today in their positions is something that was genetic and innate, and they were always that way from childhood. Like, when you're 6 years old, when you're 12 years old, when you're 21 years old, were you always in that, leadership position? Or do you think it was a behavioral and social and cognitive, as a trait, it's a behavioral trait that you kind of picked up and learned because of the environment you were in, or because of the blessings or hardships? It could be either or, right? I mean, we can become leaders because of very difficult circumstances in our upbringing, and we can also become leaders because we find the blessings that we're in kind of help us grow into that position. Some people say it's genetic. A lot of kind of very alpha figures say, oh, my dad was a champion, he was a leader, and so I had to become a leader, and it's in our bloodline, and they say it that way. Other people, they give me the scenarios in which they grew up with, and you kind of feel like, yeah, your social area, or even geographical area, kind of built you the way you are. So what do you think that is? Do you think your leadership position today and the skills you've acquired is something over time, or is something that was just, you were meant to be this?
I think it's a combination of both, right? I believe, early on, it was environment, and I grew up in a middle class, right? So it's not like it was a push, in that aspect. It was growing up in a middle class. I had to learn how to make my own money. I wasn't going to wait for my parents to give me money. And so that's the first, I think, just sign of leadership that kind of I can think of in myself. Other kids weren't doing it, right? But it was something that I wanted to do because I liked coming home and taking my wad of ones and fives and tens and counting it endless number of times and coming up with a different amount each time. It was kind of a funny thing, right? And I liked having my own piggy bank, and I liked, going out, and very early on, I wasn't afraid to approach people, and I think that's another trait, right? That, it was nothing for me to, you know, knock on a neighbor's door and say, "Hey, can I cut your grass?" or "Can I shovel the snow?" or go down to the grocery store and "Can I help you carry your grocery bags to the car?" So those interpersonal skills were kind of there from an early age. Then, my folks fought to get us into, in Washington, D.C., they had a youth leadership institute called, and it was created by Mayor Marion Barry, and it was the Mayor's Youth Leadership Institute. And so my parents fought to get, us into programs like that, where, these leadership skills would be further developed, right? And looking back, it was probably the most powerful single experience that I can think of that really thrust me into, you know, this naturalness for leadership, right? If that's a word, naturalness,
Mm-hmm.
right? It meaning it was just comfortable, comfortable in your skin, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Youth Leadership Institute, the first year you're a participant. The second year you come back as an assistant trainer. And then the third year you come back, you're a head trainer, right? And you're teaching kids specific skills um, to help them become more self-aware, uh, to help them understand the community in which they grew up in, um, and to become better stewards of the community in which you're growing up in. And it was transformative for every kid that was in there. And it's really helped to shape the future Dominic that we'll talk about a little bit later.
And yeah, I kind of agree with you in the a little bit of both, because I remember when I was younger, there were kids who were just happy, going to school, coming home, do nothing. And there were other kids who were like, no, I want to get this. I'm going to go find a way to get it. I'm going to go, work or do whatever I have to do. Like you said, odd jobs here and there, and kind of have that independence, have that drive and push. So I guess we can call that genetic, or, however you want to call it, innate. And then the other part is, thank you, mom and dad, because they put you into the places that essentially shaped you and shaped the future of who you've become, like you said. So, in your case, that's where it all started for you in Washington. Now that eventually grew to become not that specific program, but I mean, you grew to then found Turner Foundation for Community Advocacy, and now you're in Atlanta, far from Washington. What do you do with the Turner Foundation, and what is the vision? What's the day to day like? What goes on in there?
Yeah. So before we dive there, I think it's good to highlight the fact that I spent, quite a bit of time in corporate America. Um, that was that was really the teeth cutting experience of working in complex corporate environments. That was the development of the specific set of skills around selling in um, complex IT solutions to a diverse audience, right? Getting a whole host of stakeholders involved. Um, I started out at the bottom rung of this career as a business development person, right? And kind of learning sales methodologies that would follow me later in my career, and then helping other sales leaders to hit their quota. So starting to develop this team selling environment culture that would become part of my DNA, right? Selling in a team. Um, then some of these other traits that have followed me into my future career in community advocacy work were, learning how to navigate these very complex corporate environments and org structures and getting to the right decision maker and helping them understand what your vision is, what you're selling, and how it can, what's in it for them, how can it help them solve a business problem. Um, and then um, more and more of those corporate experiences began to shape my career as I moved from business development into, having a book of business myself and being responsible for closing the business rather than finding the business only, right? So, if a complex sale back then was 8 steps, with the first four being, the pre-qualification and leading up to a qualified lead, so to speak, and then the last 4 being the closing. I was transitioning from the first 4 to now the last 4, and understanding, going deeper in the sales cycle, what was involved in that. And it's a whole different world on that side, because you're now internally selling, right? You got to sell other stakeholders in your business, and you're also trying to sell this prospective customer. And so I had to learn how to navigate not only the organization that I was selling into, I had to learn how to navigate the organization that I'm representing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's 2 sales motions that are happening at the same time when you get into these 6 and 7 figure complex IT sales opportunities, right? And then you've got to learn how to navigate all of that in a timely, concise manner, and that's where your pipeline management comes in, right? And then you got to be able to close this business in a specific quarter or budget cycle or in your fiscal year for it to count towards your quota. And so, I got really good at that. And then that led me to, starting to get the rewards for that kind of work, right? Where you are, you're starting to get recognized with all these accolades and President's Club awards and stuff like that. So you take 15 years of that, right? And let's kind of put a pin in that. Then you look at going back to my growing up, watching my dad, who was a military chaplain. He fought in the Korean conflict. He was U.S. Army, and watching him come back, and he's raising us in the house. He's not happy with the way that the community looks, and there's a lot of crime and all of this stuff. So he gets out there, and by himself, he decides that he's going to address the neighborhood by getting out there and cleaning it up, so to speak, himself, right? And so he literally just got out there right across the street from where we grew up and started cleaning out the underbrush, all of the heavily wooded area that was conducive to hiding criminal activity. So he wanted to make it less convenient for criminals to stake out in those wooded areas. So he just out there just hacking it and whacking it down himself. And, we're on a block system in DC. So it's literally blocks, neighborhood blocks, right? And they're literally squares in most cases. And so he's goes down one side of the block. Years later, he's all the way down to the other corner of the block. Years later, he's down here until he's done a complete circle. And all along, people are joining him to help him in this work, right? And he's literally now got the whole community involved. He's got the civic association involved. He got DC government involved. And he's making things happen that would not have happened had he gotten comfortable one day and said, "No, I'm not going to get out there and do it." Right? And so I came down here. So let's put a pin there, right? So we got 2 pins. So I came down here to Atlanta, and I purchased my property in the north side of Atlanta. And I noticed a street that doesn't have sidewalks. I notice women with baby strollers walking on this street, no sidewalks, all times of day and night. I saw people coming from the bus stop, walking, cars going literally within inches of hitting them. No lights. You're making a quick swerve because you're literally driving 30, 40 miles an hour down this neighborhood street. And here comes this pedestrian, and you driving up next to him. Whoa, I didn't see him, right? That kind of situation. Then I found out that on on this specific section of the road in my neighborhood, there's a 40-foot drop off. So the road's here, and then there's a drop off on each side, 40 feet down. Car rode off that 40-foot embankment, went down in that valley, person died. So you take the pen from the first pen that I did with my work in corporate IT, and you couple it with the pen from my dad and the work that he was doing in the community. And I said, okay, I'm going to take those two things and I'm going to go to the top of city government and I'm going to do exactly what my dad did, but I'm going to bring this corporate experience to the table, right? And so I literally reached out to the top of city government in the newly formed city at the time. And within 4 months, I'm meeting with the project managers out there on the street and looking at blueprints that include almost quarter miles worth of sidewalks, about 15 to 20 street lights. I'm looking at guardrails, and it was amazing how that whole experience, kind of played out. And so within a year, start to finish, I had secured $1 million worth of neighborhood improvements. And all of those improvements and this is a decade ago at least. And I just feel proud every time I walk down or see that street, people using it to this day. And that would not have happened had I not advocated for it to happen. And so I was like, okay, that's kind of cool, right? I can do this, right? You're bringing that corporate navigating complex environments to the community advocacy space. And I said, okay, fast forward to a couple of years ago, I purchased an investment property on the south side of Atlanta, and it was brand new construction. And in order to get to it, you had to drive through trash, literal trash on both sides of the road. And I did the exact same thing I did in the north side of town, reached out to the department that handles that. So I had to learn how to navigate city government, which is complex org by itself. But then you put all the departments in there and it becomes even doubly complex. So
and hence the birth of the word bureaucracy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So I had to find out who owns trash. Public Works. I had to find out who owns streets. That's DOT, Department of Transportation. Who owns parks? That's Parks and Recs. And all three of these overlap in that area. And so, I had to learn how to navigate that. And it was at that point that I said, and this is all while I'm working in corporate America, I said, I'm going to standardize this process that I'm doing. And that's where the foundation was born. And I said, I'm going to come up with a way to make this a repeatable process where I can plug and play any city and get the same outcome doing the same thing. And that's where the foundation was born.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, wow, you couldn't have actually advocated for Compassiviste any better. Or nobody could have any better than your story, because you're taking education and your work in corporate America. I'm putting that under education because it prepared you in that way. It gave you all the tools, and that's what education does. Whether you're learning to, handle a knife, or you're learning how to write, or whatever it is you're doing to use those tools, you're getting educated. So, like you said, 15 years of education. And then there's the whole aspect of your father who got up one day and said, okay, if somebody's got to do it, it's got to be me, and that's compassion in the first place, because he's doing this out of compassion. He wasn't doing this because he was thinking, the criminal activity, I want to sell my property, it's going to drop in value. If I clean up the community, then the properties go up and I become richer. I don't think he was doing it for that. He was doing it because, he's like, I want to live in a better place. Like you said, he was thinking the community is not where I want it to be. Right. And so he got out there to make a better community. That's compassion and activism right there, because he starts with compassion, saying, I want a better community, gets out there and says, I'm going to activate. Activism to me is not holding placards and rally and stuff and then nothing happens, because nothing happens. You spend 4 hours there, you have some lemonades and meet some new people and get crazy. And then if you're lucky and you're not arrested, you come home. But that's it. That's all you did. You didn't do anything further. But here, the advocacy and the activism is he went out. And when you're saying, a few years later, he's down here. A few years, you said it so fast, but I want people to stop right there and think a few years later. That's a lot of commitment. That's every day. 365 days is 1 year. And then you multiply this by, a bunch of years. And that's what it takes to get something like that going. And that resilience and that willpower, that sheer willpower, and that gets instilled in you because you see the result. You see how your father turned things around by doing that, and you realize you need to put in the work. And then you go and you put in the work, and again, you see it. You see the sidewalks, you see the guardrails, you're doing good, the community's, getting somewhere with it. And so that is exactly what I'm trying to advocate for. I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to solve a single problem. I'm not out here trying to say, everybody follow me so that we can go and stop plastics or clean up the ocean. There's a lot of people doing a lot of great things in the world. What I'm really trying to advocate for is we need to find the Dominic Turners of the world, and we need to bring all of those Dominic Turners together in a space where there's enough funding for them. Just the same thing we do. Imagine the NBA or the NFL or any professional league. What are they doing? They're bringing the best people in that specific sport. Never mind the teams. They're bringing the people to the sport. Within that sport, they're allocating them into spaces, different cities, and then they become teams. And then they put them, to compete against each other. And they're making a ton of money through that process. That is the business model of it. Find the best people, put them in a league together, let them go at it. People will watch. We'll make a ton of money. That's the idea for the league. I'm thinking a compassion league. Let's bring Dominic Turner and every other professional at that level that gets things done. And when we get to that point and we have enough funding, we just let them go. Dominic Turner has a leash on now because he's limited by the funding and how much he can kind of impact, because it's not the model. He's proven success over and over. He's done it on the north side. He's done it on the south side. And he knows what he's doing. What does it take to make Dominic Turner successful across the country? Because the same scenario you talked about with a person falling off the embankment, I know somebody whose relative died in the same manner in California. So it's not that street that you're on. It's everywhere around the country, and it's everywhere beyond the country and around the world, right? And so that's the whole point. How do we grow? And that's really why I wanted to talk to you and why I wanted to have you on the show and really collaborate further, because I saw the success that you're after. A lot of people, they start a foundation, and I speak with them, and even ones that are centuries old. I speak with them and I say, what are you doing? Where are you headed? What's the goal here? And they don't really have one. It's just a matter of, I'm here. This is my salary. This is my job. We help feed people, for example. We help homelessness. And I know a bunch of people who are doing this, for example, in LA, Skid Row. It's just getting worse every year. And I say to them, how do you kind of configure your metrics here? Because what I'm looking at is you're not really doing well. If this was an investment opportunity, you're not doing well. But I look at you, and coming from the finance world, where my fund used to be involved in kind of investing in the people and the ideas, there's an exit strategy and there's a success. You're continuously advocating for a way that you're continuously successful. So to me, when I look at that, I look at the geography you're in. I look at, what you've been able to achieve. I look at the impact and the value. So the investment of, say, $1 million, like you said, for, that street and all of that. When you pitch it against lives, even if you had saved one life, just one, is it worth $1 million? Hell yeah. Hell yeah, it's worth $1 million. Now, you saved multiple lives because we don't know, how many people would have been impacted, like you said, walking with a baby stroller on the street and getting hit
Every
or something
time,
like
I'll
that.
tell you this, every time I go down there and that guardrail is dinged up and smashed up,
Yes,
that's a
yes.
life saved,
Yeah,
because
that's you put a
if
number
that
there.
if that guardrail wasn't there, who
Mm-hmm.
knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the guardrails are there, and when they are utilized, you understand why the guardrail was there, and you potentially saved a life
Mm-hmm.
because because the guardrail is there. I want to go back to one thing. What I learned in this whole thing is that community advocacy work is not a one call that's all kind of work. And my
Mm.
dad's example should prove that, right? It's down in the trenches type of work over time. And to see these grassroots changes, right? I think there's probably been ton loads of other community advocates that have come and gone, and what I'm seeing is if you get into this kind of work expecting that you're just going to make one phone call with your influence and you're going to get this stuff done with one phone call and you move on to the next thing, you'll make a whole lot of one phone calls and you'll see a whole lot of nothing on the back end. Um, it's trench work over time until you see the change in place. It's because what I've learned working with city government is city government is run by administrations, and administrations have their focuses, they have their objectives, they have their missions, and when that administration goes,
Mm.
what
Yeah.
happens to your projects, right? So you've got to learn how to make the work that you're doing transcendent above and beyond whatever
Mm.
administration comes or
A
goes, right?
transitionable work
You got
that
to
can
be
go
up
through
here.
all of them. Yeah.
Here comes Mayor Johnny. Mayor Johnny is here for 2 to 4 years. Mayor Johnny is gone. Mayor Steve comes in
Mm.
2 to 4 years. You still got to be able to operate above that change. And that's another critical piece, right? I've got friends who they've done this work, and their work was bolted into an administration, and then when administration was gone, it can really affect your
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
motion. So I've learned through them and through their experience to continue to push to make sure that your stuff stays above the ever changing aspects and nature of city government, for example.
And that's a really good lesson because now a lot of people in the audience who may not be dealing with city directly, but in any circumstance, it's kind of like having one funder for your organization. God forbid something happens to that one funder, you're closing shop because you've never really, transitioned beyond that funder. Everything's kind of like tied to that person. But a lot of people get so comfortable because that one funder is someone like Bill Gates. Like, Bill Gates is always there, is always funding me. But you never know, right? And so you put all your eggs in one basket, it gets really tough. Now here, the problem is with governments, and I've been through this myself in different places. You're absolutely right. You do everything to convince Mayor Sarah, to get this done with you, and she's on board with you, and she's loving it and everything else, and her term's done. And Mayor Steve comes, like you say, and Mayor Steve says, "Oh, I'm completely against this whole structure. Like, I don't even bring that to my table, right?" And you're like, "Oh my God, I was 2 months from a signature and getting it over. Now I have to start all over again and redirect all the metrics to how Mayor Steve kind of feels like it will work for his administration." And it becomes, but I think resilience and community really help when it comes to these kind of roadblocks and administrative issues, because sheer willpower and a one person show kind of dies out when you bring this collective power of larger organizations and larger systems into space. But when you have a collective and when you have a community rallying for something, I think that administration kind of inherently has to abide by and believe in the community's wants and desires, because that is the process of the elections. That is the process of the mayor kind of going up, because the mayor doesn't retire and then goes and becomes a kids basketball coach. No, they move from mayor to, say, for example, governor, and then they have aspirations as well. Those aspirations grow by the measure of basically how well they do in that position, right? So the more advocacy, the more community, the better the results eventually. So how do you do that? How do you get people involved in what you're doing, as opposed to just you being the only person, at the Turner Foundation doing everything?
Yeah, it's part of what we teach is coalition building, right?
Yes.
The thing that I learned from my dad. Now, my dad, he's from a different generation. I'm gonna get out there and do it on my own. And like I told you, my corporate. Well, let me back up. He was like, I'm gonna get out there. I'm not going to wait for anyone else to do it. I'm gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't anti coalition. He just got out there and other people saw it and joined in. So I want to make that clear. With where I am,
That's leadership, though, right? That's
right?
leadership. That's kind of like, and
Yeah,
I think it probably. I haven't been in the military, but I watch movies, and I see in the movies one brave person can make a huge difference to the situation. And that first brave person then rallies everybody, and all of a sudden a loss becomes a win. And so I'm kind of imagining your dad as that Rambo
yeah,
situation,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
He's out there, he's doing it. So
Yeah.
I'm taking sort of the framework, and then I'm putting coalition building to it that I learned from corporate, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And so I'm starting with a coalition, right? And so I'm going out and I'm forming these partnerships with different organizations that believe in the work that we're doing, right? And are willing to fund that work
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and support that work in a variety of different ways. And then I'm working with city government to make sure that the promises made are kept, right? And then making sure that the community is looped in on the entire process and is able to give input and feedback to city government. And then involving all of these different organizations, other nonprofits, right? Because it's amazing in this work that I've done in the park and green space um, aspect of our work. You'd be blown away how many organizations are involved in, for example, um, a mixed use mountain biking and hiking trail, right? There are ton loads of organizations that have visions of a mountain biking and hiking trail that's part of a larger trail system that connects communities, that brings students together, teaches kids how to tool on mountain bikes. It creates almost like a microcosm of organizations out there that are tied to just mountain biking and mixed use hiking and trails in a public park, right? So in doing this work, I'm starting to see the power of bringing all of these different organizations together because they continue to drive you and your mission forward, right? And then in teaching kids how to do this, it is literally helping them understand that they don't have to be old people to make a difference in their communities. They can make a difference now. If a social media influencer can be a teenager and make 7 figures a year, right? And they can barely drive a car, right? Then a junior high school student can advocate for change in his or her community. And by coupling them with this kind of approach through coalition building and through connecting them to the very sources of power that make these decisions for us, that's the model that I've built and will continue to push forward. And other organizations are wanting to bolt onto that, and see that vision grow.
That super organization essentially happen when everybody comes together and they all kind of merge into realizing the mission and the vision. Now, I was actually thinking about exactly what you were saying when I was preparing for speaking with you, and I was going through some numbers. And the other day, a few weeks ago, I came across this article that was talking about median homes in the U.S. And I was just looking at different cities, and I saw San Francisco, the Bay Area. It's at $1.5 million median home. And then I was thinking about your story, and you're saving lives for the same amount of money that costs one house in San Francisco. And like you said, the dents in the guardrails. And I'm thinking how skewed our visions are about the value of money and what we do with money. And then I was thinking, if for every $1 million, someone like Dominic can actually go out there and make this kind of impact where, like you said, every time you see the dents on the guardrail, you just look at that and say, thank you, Dominic. How much is that worth? And how easy should we be able to get that money together? Because then, speaking to a friend of mine who lives in New York, she was complaining about her gym membership. And I said, why, how much is she paying? She's like, a lot more than everybody else. And I said, why, how much is she? And then we started arguing about it, whether it's expensive or not compared to Europe and all of that. And we found out that the average American, monthly membership for a gym is $50. And I was thinking to myself, I'm doing numbers again because I'm a finance guy, right? So that's my background. And I thought to myself, you know what? $50 a person. If you're giving $50 to the gym, and then we found out that 70% of the people don't actually use the gym that they buy a membership at a rate that equates to average use, which is more than twice a week. So then if you're paying that $50 and actually not going there, and that's 70%, and I can guarantee you there's more than 100,000 people who have gym memberships in the US on a monthly basis. That's just a silly small number. There's probably more than that in your state alone. If we can get people to come together and put that kind of money on a monthly basis towards these kind of coalitions, like you're advocating, like you're creating and forming, you don't have a limitation, because you can then expand and replicate your program, not just in Atlanta or South or North Atlanta or any of that, not even Georgia, but you can really expand and grow this because your model is so replicable. It doesn't really, if you were a celebrity, if you were Oprah, and you said, oh, yeah, I cleaned up the street, I did this to the park, I got the city to change this and that. And, I kind of will put that weight on the celebrity status of Oprah or the power she brings to the table. I mean, she could pick up the phone in any state and call the mayor and say, come over, I want to talk to you. And the mayor will go over and talk to her, and things will get done. But here you come, like you said, middle-class upbringing, regular person. You've done, you've worked like many Americans, and you don't have that influencer status of having 20 million followers or anything like that, but you got the work done. And so it's replicable for me in the sense that this isn't Oprah saying, I did it, you can do it. This is you, who is exactly like me, saying, I did it, you can do it. And so we can take this program and recreate it in Florida, recreate it in Louisiana, recreate it all across, areas around you, and further all the way to Washington, probably, the furthest point from you. And so what does it take? What do you think it takes to make that next move, to take this model where before it's too late? And the reason I say it's too late is you can only live to about a century. At about 100, you're going to pass away. And that's just the reality. I don't want the model to get to a place where you're 100 and you're really fighting till the last breath. And then when you pass away, they close the Turner Foundation and, they create a statue of you who's a good man. And then that's it. And then there goes all the work you did. Because at that point, it becomes a loss. You did some good work, but it becomes a loss because we could not take your energy and kind of, give it that momentum to go on endlessly. What do we do?
I'll say this. I'll say this, right? I don't know if it's a lot of times small businesses live and die by the founder because of the decision to only do this work yourself. I've seen, let me just give you this example. Let's take a landscaping company, right? Two owners of two different landscaping companies. Owner one decides, I'm going to cut all the grass myself. I'm going to weed whack all the lawns myself. I'm going to drive the truck myself. And I'm going to go out and get the business myself. Owner two, I'm going to hire somebody to cut the grass to replace myself. I'm going to hire somebody to prune the lawn to replace myself. I'm going to hire somebody to go out here and build a book of business to replace myself. This person's business ends up growing exponentially, whereas this person's business dies with them. What's the difference? The difference is in mindset and your willingness to go into business with the goal being to replace yourself in that business, duplicate yourself in that business. And the faster you can get to replacing yourself in that business model that you're doing, the longer your thing is going to last. My goal in building a foundation is that it's something that is there long after I'm gone. And my kids' kids can benefit from this. And their kids can benefit from this. And teaching them how to do what I'm doing, but not just to do it themselves, but to replace themselves. And so you got to get into this kind of work with that mindset, or you'll be a one generational, one trick pony, unfortunately. And so a business will grow if you have that mindset that I'm going to put people in place that can do this work, and I can replace myself through that person. There's a saying, I'd rather have 1% of 100 people's efforts rather than
And
100%
100%
of my
of one
own,
person.
right?
Yeah, yeah, I
I'm
know
that
that.
1%, and I'm going to train 100 people to do what I'm doing. The mentorship program is there to train a whole generation of kids to do what I'm doing, right? And last I checked, there's kids all around this country in every city. There's schools in every city. There's public schools in every city. There's problems in every city. There's city governments in every city. And there are people at the top of those city governments who would love to have a program just like this, where they're working directly with little kids, showing them how to get resources directly from them.
Mm.
So, from a scaling perspective, I'm just at a point now where I'm looking to replace myself in these day-to-day functions. I can train somebody to go into a school and teach a kid how to be a community advocate. And that's what I'm doing, right? That's what my goal is. And when it comes to funding, just to cut right to the chase, the funding is to enable me to continue to replace
Mm.
myself and put people in place to do these day-to-day functions so that I can go on and continue to build it from a larger scale. So if it's a how can you help kind of thing, it's there that small businesses, nonprofits like ours need for those people who are looking beyond just the one trick pony kind of mindset. They're looking for a way to replace themselves in that business so that that business can grow beyond them. And that's where it really hits that's where it really makes the difference. All these corporations that are wanting to be a part of our foundation see the potential of this, and they're willing to put people in place to help us get there.
Mm-hmm. And, you're right, because I like when you said, duplicating yourself, because that's exactly bringing all the Dominic Turners of the world together. You're essentially duplicating yourself so that you can create a bigger impact in that way. Now, for me, when I look at the work that you're doing, on the very, very kind of macro level, if I had to explain this to someone, I would probably say, if I were investing in Dominic as an investment model, I'm investing in a happier society, a happier future. I'm investing in safety, community, reducing crime, just making, whether it's my community or a larger community or a community I'm not even in, just by the sheer desire of me to see kids happy or grow up in a safer environment and do better in their lives, I'm investing in that. So I think the investment part speaks for itself here. And the duplication, I mean, the ability for you to be able to go out there and, like you say, duplicate yourself so that this can grow and scale, is a matter of people coming together and saying, okay, the cost of this factory to duplicate Dominic Turner so that we can expand this is this much, is X dollars. Got to put the X dollars together and get the factory churning out the duplicates, right? And I think that's the stage that you should be at right now in your model, in the sense of, I know what I'm doing. I've been training people. I know how this model works. I've been doing it at a certain scale. And I think it's time to say, okay, let's scale this up to an operation where the duplication can become bigger, larger numbers, and the factory can actually churn out more of the stuff that you're doing in your advocacy programs, whether it's the mentorship, whether, helping kids make better choices, grow up in better ways, or whether it's scholarships or, all the different ways that you're impacting community.
I agree. It's. I think if there's one message I would have to say to any other small businesses out there who are striving to do what we're doing, you gotta trust others to do and to join you. And yeah, I tell my brother who's he's an entrepreneur as well. He's a clothing designer. You got to get up. You got to replace yourself behind that sewing machine, man. You can't be sewing and scale your business. You can't be seaming hems and sewing buttons and doing the designs. There's a lot of talented people out there that can do that so that you can get out there and continue to grow your business. But that doesn't happen if you don't trust people enough to bring them on and train them how to do that work, right? And I see so many small businesses come and go because they can't let go. They don't want to let go. They want to try to own the whole thing, soup to nuts. Yes, it's yours. It's your baby. You created it. Now, in order to grow it, you got to put some seed in the ground and water it and nurture it and watch that come to harvest. But that water and the seed in the ground is you trusting other people and you being smart enough and surrounding yourself with smart people to help you find smart people, to put them into these positions to help you grow your business. And then, I think I'm a visionary teaching others how to be visionary. That's it in a nutshell, right? You know what? They done built a whole job title over this in nonprofit fundraising. It's the development director or the chief development officer. It blows me away, right, when I see it, right? Because it used to be chief marketing officer, right? CMO, right? Now it's chief development officer. In corporate America, it could be chief revenue officer, right? But in nonprofit, it's chief development officer, that person who sells the vision, right? And other companies buy into that vision, right? That's what the development officer's role really is, right? And so, it's really it's vision, and it's your vision, and you are able to communicate that vision to others. They see that vision, they want to be a part of that, and then your job is to teach others how to share that vision as well. And so yeah, I can go on and on about this, but I'll pause there. I see your thoughts turning in your head. What's coming to mind for you?
I'm starting to think about something a little radical here, and that is when I kind of mimicked your life a little bit in the sense that I was in the corporate world, and then I came into this space and started Compassiviste as a movement and a foundation with multiple arms. And as I started getting more and more involved over the years with what I'm doing, I started thinking maybe, just maybe, we have it all wrong. Because I look at people like yourself and myself and many others, and we put all of the visions and all of the desires and the wills and the efforts of wanting and demanding a better world under this umbrella called nonprofit. And then in this umbrella, we also have places that are set up for emergency response or some other advocacy work or some other support systems like abused women, animals, children, and things that we need in society because we live in an unequal world. I mean, we live in an unbalanced world. So essentially, to me, the reason nonprofit or charity exists in the model it does today, and the governments try to support it by, hey, if you donate, we'll give you a tax break and things like that, is because everybody recognizes we live in a broken system. So to kind of balance, or, as best as we can balance this broken system, we create nonprofits and charities, and we let them come in to the places where the social nets have failed in the systems that we live in. But then I look at the work that you're doing and others just like yourself, and I say, that's not the work that is responding to an immediate earthquake or flood or a hurricane or anything like that. It's actually, one step higher. It's bringing people to a place where they have the skills now to deal with the hurricane, regardless of having to sit there and wait for somebody to come and rescue them or help them or things like that. So you're kind of like I'm watching the whole situation happen in North Carolina and Florida and other places over the last month. And you see the systems break down. Doesn't matter. It's not a political thing. It's not about Trump or Harris or anything like that. It's just you see people not being helped. It's just the reality of it. And then you think, why is this happening? And you think, what do? Do we throw more money at charities to go into these places and help? Okay, what are we going to do when the flood's bigger? What are we going to do when the problems exacerbate? Can we just keep throwing money at charities and hope that they will kind of balance the inequality? Louisiana still have issues from Katrina. So how much can you throw money at it without developing the person? And I think the developing the person model should not be looked at as, what Dominic is doing is really fascinating. I'll give my $50 there this year instead of the Red Cross. That's not the mentality people should have. People should come to this space in the sense that this is where my world becomes better. The problems of society kind of become fixed. They don't balance with money. There's some things you can balance with money. You have, when I was really wealthy, I had friends from, when I was younger who were broke, and they stayed broke. And when I became really wealthy, it wasn't that I went and gave them money, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to go have a nice dinner. I like my friend Jack. He's a good friend of mine. I'm going to take him with. I'll pay for it. It's no big deal for me. What's a couple of $100? No big deal. Great. But can you ever replicate this commonality of everybody living within a standard that you appreciate by continuously paying for everybody? You can't. I can't take everybody on trips and give everybody a Lamborghini. I can't do that. But there is a way I can begin to interfere and influence people's lives so that they can live better. I knew how to do that financially. So my friend Jack, what I did for him is I said, hey, you're getting screwed on your mortgage. This is wrong. The way you're paying off your credit cards, all these things you're doing are wrong because you don't have the education. Nobody's there to teach you. So let me help you. I went in, restructured his financial models, put a little money aside for him, invested that with my own money for him, kind of helped him out. A few years down the road, Jack is buying a new build in a subdivision, selling his house, moving in there. A few years later, he's moving into another one, and the mortgage is getting lower and lower because he's making profit and he's making returns. And next thing you know, Jack has a child, and he's able to put money aside for university. That's something that Jack never even thought about in his life. He never went to school, but and he never thought about any of those things. But you're able to do that. And now I see him at his job sites replicating this education to the people that are working for him now, right? I see him going like, let me see your statement, and very frank and open. Like, let me see your statement. No, you can't do this. This is wrong. You can't live like this. I'm not giving you your paycheck if you keep throwing it down the drain like this. And he's fighting with his employees about it. This is a replicable situation. You see, everybody can kind of learn from it. But let's not call it charity. Let's call it the need of the hour, because that is the most important social issue that we're lacking in the developed world today. And I say developed world because I also really despise when people come to me and say, oh, would you like us to be involved in environmental issues with the work you're doing with the Maasai in Africa? And I say, excuse me? What we're trying to do with the Maasai in Africa and teach them how in the dryness that's happening and all the problems that they're having, how to maintain their cattle and live and survive till tomorrow. And you're coming here and telling me like we should teach them environmental what? They don't even have running electricity. What are you talking about? Just so you can get some money and tell people you're working on a project, like that's just fraud to me, right? But people are doing this kind of stuff. But the real problem in the developed world is that it's the development of people. It's not the resources. We have all the resources in the world. You go into any state, any city, any town, any village, any street in America, you will find food. There's no shortage of food, okay? But there are hungry people. You go into every street in America, there's a police officer. There's enough police officers to just look at every street in the US. But there's still, you know what? Atlanta. You're in Atlanta. It's one of top 10 cities for child trafficking and things like that in the US, right? There's no lack of good people. There's no lack of policing. There's a lack of social will to address the issue. There's not enough Dominic Turners to come and say, okay, enough, no more. We're not losing one more child. And all of us are going to sit there all night making sure not one more child. Where are these child trafficked from? Where are they kidnapped from? Let's go scope it out. There's more than 1 million people in town. Can 10,000 people not come together and make this kind of move? No, they can't. Why? Because the mindset's not there. But that's why I like what you're doing. Again, because I want to take it out of this whole concept of it's a charitable cause. It's a good thing. Dominic's philanthropic. That's just garbage to me. I'm sorry. I don't want to talk like that. I want to talk about Dominic's the person that's going to change the way that city is living. Dominic's going to be the person that's going to develop the youth so that they have the skills not to be in this situation. And they have the skills to advocate for a better tomorrow in Atlanta, you know? They have the skills to want to reduce that Atlanta being in the top 3 cities of America for trafficking, Atlanta being a hub for drugs, Atlanta being X, Y, and Z, and change Atlanta to being, what it has the potential to be. And so that's advocacy for me. That it's not. I don't call it charity. I don't call it nonprofit. I call it, it's religion for me. That's what missionary is. When you're on a mission, that's what it is. You're bringing faith to a community. You're bringing betterness.
It's interesting that you would say this because immediately what comes to mind is this biblical phrase, "My people perish," and I'm going to paraphrase the phrase. It says, "My people perish due to lack of vision or knowledge," right?
Knowledge, yeah.
And what I'm seeing is that what I've experienced real time, and we've all done it. You see something on the road, you see it, we have a lot of deer, right? In Georgia this time of year. For whatever reason, they just get active and they're out. And so unfortunately it becomes a lot of roadkill, right? Mm-hmm. Deer carcasses. You drive past that carcass and you're going, I hope somebody else gets that. And you keep on going, right? That's your thought, right? I hope somebody picks that up. Hope somebody cleans it up. Same with trash. Same with the crime in the neighborhood. I hope somebody stops this madness. The same with the conditions that become generational. I hope that somebody comes along and addresses this persistent problem. And what I'm seeing is that there's that hope factor there, but really what makes a difference between a underserved community in many instances and one that's served very well is knowledge on how to get stuff, right? And so basically, if I don't see, if people in underserved communities knew how to get stuff like they do in the communities that get stuff, there wouldn't be that underserved marker anymore, right? I'm not doing anything different than what they do in the communities that are well served. They just know how to get it. And so that's where there's there is a gap in knowledge, right? And so if you can address that knowledge gap in how you get stuff and how do you advocate, how do you actually work with city government to get stuff, that gap closes, right? So all I'm trying to do is show the next generation of kids how to work with city government to get stuff to close that gap. It's all the same tax dollars that we all pay.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, those tax dollars, I don't know how it happens. Those tax dollars go way over here, but you live over here in abject poverty. And the same tax dollars over here, they're plush. They're living the life, right? So, and again, what you find a lot in these communities, I hope somebody else deals with that. Over here, they know how to get it, and they're gonna get it, right? So advocacy work is not just, hey, let me help you get it. It's let me show you how to get it, and let me teach you how to get it.
Going back to the Bible, teaching how to fish versus giving them fish, right?
Exactly.
That's what it is. And you know what? I had this experience at a time when I was ignorant. Okay, I was just pumping money, and I was ignorant. And I was sitting with high-ranking people because I was exactly in that community that you talk about. I was very wealthy, and I was sitting with high-ranking city people. And we were talking about snowfall because in Toronto we get crazy snow. And I was saying, you know what? I had this one employee who lived in a poorer part of town. And whenever there was snowfall, they couldn't come to work because, the street would be covered in snow and all that. And by the time the plows came through and everything, the day would be over, right? The city plows and everything else would be there, parked. I'd see them. I'd wake up early in the morning. I'd see them parked, waiting to start their shift in my area before the storm, like before they're ready. They know it's going to happen. They're parked there because God forbid my street should have snow on it when I get out of the house. Why? Well, I brought this up to this. I said, guys, why are you not plowing those streets? Because I figure me in my wealth, if I get a snow day, it doesn't really affect me. I could probably work from home, and worst case in this city, all of us have cars that will make it through the snow. We have the best winter tires, the best 4x4s, and whatever it takes to get through that snow. I'll pull a Hummer out if I have to get through if I want to, because I have the means to do that. But you go down to that area, and people are, from bicycle to walking and trying to get to the subway, all the way to having a car that, is dangerous to even be driving in that season. But you're not helping those guys first. One person turned around and said to me, well, the property taxes you pay and the investment value, people come and see the areas and, they will buy a house here because all the services are there all the time and so many other reasons they brought up. And I thought, wow, it's all kind of purposed to the people who know how to work the system and who know how to get the benefit out of the system. And we use that in many different ways. Another time, as I was growing in the city financially, one very wealthy member of a very wealthy family said, hey, Ali, which hospital do you donate to? And I said, I don't donate to a hospital. I actually donate to these other places. And like, why? And I said, I don't know. I see so many people donating to hospitals. I figured, there's enough money. And plus, we have a universal healthcare system. So, things are taken care of by the government, but there is real needs in these social areas. And I said, no, you're not giving it for that. You're giving it for yourself. When you go to the hospital, when you go to ER, or when you need an MRI or something, it takes months. You pay $50,000 and you become one of the, main donors and stuff. And they kind of push you to the front of the line. And so as a wealthy person, you learn the system. You learn that this $50,000 is a tax break. And on top of it, it makes sure that every time you go to the hospital, you're seen before all the people who really have emergency situations. So you're using it corruptively and legally, both ways, right? In that field. I come from that world. I'll speak for myself. I'm not even pointing fingers at anybody. I speak for myself. Every wealthy person uses the environment, the city, the state, the nation, whatever they can to their advantage, because it's easy for them to do that. And the knowledge comes easier because even if you're ignorant, you can get a lawyer who'll give you all that knowledge. And they don't even have to teach you. They do it for you. Then you come to, minorities and diversity and inclusion and all those issues, and it's non-existent. And then it's not so much getting people from minority groups to come together and kind of do this. It's more so who's going to advocate for them, who's going to teach them, who's going to show them, who's going to give them that power or that confidence to say, I can, I deserve, I am, I could go to this city works for me. It doesn't just work for Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so who lives on that street on the mansion. No, the city also works for me because I am an equal member of the city. Whether you want to call it, a federation or a democracy or a constitution or whatever you want to call your country, it's based on equality. And I think that's why I don't like calling this charity, because equality should not be charity. You as a human being are equal to the next human being, regardless of how much money they have. So to me, to say I'm a charity trying to help you in equality means I've already assumed that you're non-equal. But my thing is, let's turn what you're doing and people like yourself into advocacy, in the sense that that's what the Martin Luther Kings did. They looked at the situation. They didn't say, help the Black person because, we're not getting everything. Could you please help us? He said, no. He said, I have a right to this. This is my constitutional right. I'm going to get it. And change happened, right? Change happened because one person like your father took that first step, and then the 1 million person march happened. It didn't happen with the 1 million person march and one person came out in that march that was a dominant figure. No, it started with one person saying, I will dare to speak. And I think that advocacy is key.
I think we don't have to go real far to understand the power that one person can make in a difference of how this world works. We don't have to look too far. We've got plenty of examples of leaders that stood up and shaped the world through their vision. Regardless of whatever his political ideology is, we'll set that aside for a minute and we'll talk about Tesla, right? So Tesla, that's one dude. That's one dude.
I like how everybody's doing that now. I'm sorry, but I got to say this. I like how everybody's doing that now. Everybody is talking about Elon Musk right now. He's got to separate the man from.
Let me just carve that out, right?
And that didn't happen until this election. Great.
Yeah, I'm just going to carve that out, right? And talk about what he has done. That one dude has totally disrupted the entire auto manufacturing industry. He has totally disrupted how the electric vehicle will now survive and thrive. He has totally, because before that there were all these little startups and it just wasn't working on a scalable level. So you can't tell me that one person cannot change the world, because we got plenty of examples, right? So just when it comes to this one person here that you're speaking with, I only have visions of giving the next generation of kids this way of thinking that empowers them to feel natural in their communication when advocating for stuff. There's no help me, please, please. It's a peer-to-peer. This is what we see happening in our community. This is our solution that we would like to see. And we'd like you to help us to implement it. And it's that simple. I'm teaching the kids how to do that in every aspect of the program, from start to finish. I teach when I was in corporate IT sales, having started at the bottom as a lead gen person, right? And then teaching other folk who are coming in who are lead gen. Lead gen tends to make themselves feel inferior to the person that they're talking to as superior. Man, forget that. You are peer to peer from day one. You are having a peer to peer conversation. I don't care if you are a lead gen person that started on Tuesday and it's Thursday, and you get the CEO of or the CFO or the CTO or the CIO of Microsoft on the phone. You are peer to peer. Don't ever put yourself down as below this person. This person puts their freaking pants on the same way you do. They brush their teeth the same way you do. They put their underwear on the same way you do. Talk to them peer to peer. And so that's the whole mission to the kids, teaching them to have peer to peer conversations from day one. That I'm not, you may be superior to me in age, but I'm going to talk to you peer to peer. I'm going to come to you with a plan. This is my vision. This is how I would like you to help. And this is the solution that I want you to implement in our community. And we've already thought it out, and we've already come up with the solution when we present it to you. So that's where I am. That's where we are in this. And I'm always happy to see folk join us in this mission to help underserved communities have that peer-to-peer discussion and come to city government with solutions that will put them on the same playing field as any other part of the city. So I welcome any support in that vein, to help us to continue to fight that fight, to duplicate these efforts, to replicate what I'm doing, and to support it. So I just want to get that out there, man, because I think that's where the knowledge goes beyond just knowledge. It becomes power.
Yes. And you can activate it, right? You can actually start using it. And that's exactly, again, the Compassiviste model, right? Start with compassion, get educated, use that education to activate, and you go out into the world instead of being guided like sheep into a space where there's an X on it and say, you can protest here and this is where it is from 5 to 7 p.m. You actually go out there and make the changes you want to make. Now, that's the legacy that you want to leave behind. I got 2 questions for you. The first one is, have you ever thought about packaging your model so that it can be tangibly, sent out, tangibly kind of shared with people, whether in a book format or seminar or, course?
Yeah. I think about that all the time. It's advocacy as a service, right? It's a course in community advocacy, right? It's podcasting in community advocacy, right? It's one thing I wanted to say to something that you'd mentioned earlier. The thing that I see and this goes back to where we're talking about where these nonprofits come and go because they were hitched to one income source, so to speak. If you look at today's athletes, celebrities, and athletes who become celebrities, one thing that you'll see that I aspire to as well is diversifying income streams, right? So that you're not dependent upon one. So in that packaging model that you're talking about is that diversification mindset, partnering with organizations who support us in our marketing materials, and then being able to provide that to folk that want to purchase our goods and services that we sell through these various partners that we have, to podcasting, to me writing a book, which is something that's on the way, right? To packaging, advocacy as a service. All of these are different things that I've thought about. Yes, to answer your question.
And when you said book, I'll tell you this much: if you Compassiviste Publishing at your service, if you ever want to get that book out, publish, whatever you want to do with that, I will personally guarantee you that we'll do it for you free of charge, and put that word out there. All yours. We don't want the rights or anything. We just want to do the service to be part of growing that community and that message. So, if you have a publisher, if you have a system right now, go ahead. I'll help you as much as I can. But if you haven't reached that point yet, I'll offer you all of our publishing house services, and we're a traditional publisher, so there's no. Essentially, we're like the old school publishers. You come to us, we publish you, we do all the marketing, we do all the payments, we do everything, and basically you get royalties. The only difference being the work that I publish is meaningful work. I don't publish work that doesn't have impact. So in that impactful sense, whether it's storytelling, whether it's an actual course, doesn't matter. I leave the work, the rights of the work to the person, because I believe that's where it should stay. It should stay with the advocate. It should stay with the foundation or the community or the people who are actually taking this further, right? If I take over the rights like traditional publishing houses, it just becomes business. After many years or whatever it is, I'm just trying to push the book. I really don't care about what the book teaches, what the book's doing. I just care about the sales numbers. So at that point, it becomes dirty work for me. But we leave everything out there for the group that's trying to advocate through it. So that's on the table for you whenever you want, because I love what you're doing. And again, in any other way that we can be involved with you, let me know. We're always there. That's what Compassiviste does. We find these great people like yourself. We come in and we try to really support from fundraising to books to podcasting to art to whatever your movement's involved in. We've got multiple arms, multiple reaches, and we try to advocate for people. And my second question was in the same sense and frame of what I'm trying to do in coming to you and saying, I love what you're doing. Let's try to scale this, and let me know how I can be of service to scale this with you and to your vision. How do people do that? How does the audience do that? Where do they reach you? How do you communicate with people? Somebody listening now says, I want to come to Dominic and I want to see what he needs.
Yeah. You can always find us as a starting point through our foundation's website at joincommunityadvocacy.org. That's JOIN, community advocacy, ADVOCACY.org. Start there, and you'll see our mission. You'll understand why we started a mentorship program when we did. You'll see how the Supreme Court, decision to get rid of affirmative action influenced that. You'll see our track record of our work, the scholarships that we've given out, and our future plans there for our next class of kids getting ready to come in the next couple of weeks. So you can start there at joincommunityadvocacy.org. All of our social media handles are at the bottom of the homepage, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Threads, on Instagram. You'll see our different handles at the bottom of the homepage on our website. Donations are always accepted through the website, through our partnership there. So, feel free to always fund there if nothing more. So, hopefully that answers that question.
Perfect. And we'll put all the links here as well, so people can click and come straight to you. And I hope they do, because this is exactly what I keep telling people. You don't need to pay your money, your hard-earned money, into these relief programs and other things, and all these try to equalization programs. What you need to do is find out why you're not equal and what you can do about becoming equal, so that we can just scrap all of that other stuff that keeps communities imbalanced. So. And that's really where diversity and minority groups and a lot of the underserved populations should start looking at. They shouldn't start looking at, where do I go online to find out who can help me, or who will give me $100 if I check these boxes. Where can I get an extra $100 from the government? No, start looking for a way that you can just rise above everything in your community, within your community, with your community, so that you can be the community that you're looking at and saying they have and we don't, and balance things out and really cut through for yourself. So I love the work you're doing. Again, I can't say that enough, and definitely here to support everything you're doing and to scale and grow it for our mission. Our mission is a world with no suffering, and this is part of it. You're helping reduce suffering, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for more momentum to minimize suffering. So thank you, Dominic Turner, for speaking on Compassiviste Dialogues, and thank you for the inspiration that we can make change locally and globally when we act with compassion and purpose, and even if it starts with one person and only one person. To our audience, please subscribe to Compassiviste Dialogues channel and share this so more people hear about Dominic. And please visit his website and get in touch. And whether you're in Atlanta or whether you're in LA, New York, wherever you may be, across the pond, London, anywhere in the world, it doesn't mean, this kind of work doesn't mean you have to be part of the suburb Dominic's in to go there and support it. I think if we can see beyond the localization of these kind of efforts and look at the globalized versions of these metrics of making change, we would all invest in those kind of people and those kind of movements. We're here to help change the world together. I'm Ali Horia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. I appreciate it.